I know things are, it would be nice for me to know how many people are joining from India and how many people from here actually, because things are very, very difficult in India right now actually, Manaki. Telangana and Andhra, things are just very difficult. California. See somebody from California. Hello, Andy. I'm in New Jersey. Thankfully, it's not from Texas. Nice and warm. Sarita garu, Aishwarya garu. Chicago, Anu garu. A lot of people from the West Coast, Andy. Kind of looks like I'm the lone person from the Northeast. I'm kind of always jealous of you guys from California and Texas, Andy, because you guys get to be nice and warm all the time year round. As opposed to us, we are freezing more than half the year. All right. Kind of looks like, you know, a lot of us are from here, from the US. So, Jhansi garu, should we go ahead and start, Andy?
Yeah, sure, Andy, definitely.
Yeah, so
Abhi, can you go ahead and give the introduction?
Yeah, if I can talk for a quick. So again, hello everybody, welcome you all from WETA. So today we are having Dr. Padma Palvai garu, and she's a trained psychiatrist in both child and adolescent psychiatry. She's board certified in both of those areas. She did her adult psychiatry at Brown University, and she's currently working at the University Behavioral Health Center in New Jersey. She has practiced in a lot of prominent places, like in Rainbow Hospitals in India and Hunterdon Medical Center in New Jersey, and specializes in psychiatry and behavioral healthcare. So with that, I would like to welcome Dr. Padma garu, and again, thank you for joining us today. Yeah, the screen is all yours.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Abhi, and thank you, Jhansi garu, for giving me this opportunity to be with people from home. You know what? I'm having a little bit of trouble here, Abhi. Going to the next screen there. Okay. With Zoom, it's a little bit different. So today, what I want to do, and since it kind of looks like we have a small group so far, hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end. So today, what I plan to do is we'll talk about what depression is, because I know we talk about depression in day-to-day lives. We say we are sad, I'm kind of depressed today. So we'll talk about what depression is in clinical terms, and we'll talk then about the ways to manage depression. Now, this talk is really not tailored to physicians. We'll talk about what we're going to do, lifestyle modification ways, how we are going to treat depression. And then we really can't talk about depression without talking about stress related to COVID during this time, I don't think. So I'm going to really touch on that as much as possible today. So to begin with, let's talk a little bit about how a psychiatric diagnosis is made. Now, we all go to our primary care physicians. We know how regular diagnoses are made, right? The doctor gets history from us. They get some investigations, labs, maybe some imaging, CAT scans or MRIs, EKGs, so some tests, and then a diagnosis is made. Unfortunately, in psychiatry, for me, I really don't have any tests to make or break a diagnosis. So for me to understand whether or not my patient is depressed, I can't really do any kind of blood tests or imaging or anything like that. All I have is the information that my patient and my patient's family gives me. So it's really important for us to share accurate information with our psychiatrists or therapists. And it's also important for us to give all of the information and not to hide parts of the information that we want to give them. Sometimes out of embarrassment, people do that, I think. So at this point, we are not at a point where we can rule in or rule out depression by any kind of test. Psychiatric diagnoses, and a lot of you probably already know this, but psychiatric diagnoses are characterized by a collection of symptoms. So when we say depression, it's really a collection of symptoms. So if we say depression is a collection of symptoms, what collection of symptoms is it? So to make a diagnosis of depression, it is not enough for people to be kind of sad once in a while. That is really not clinical depression for us to be making a diagnosis. So depression is when people are depressed, or this is important, you know, people usually think of depression as just sadness, but a lot of times people are just very irritable and angry when they're depressed. So it can be either depressed or irritable mood and loss of interest in things that were once pleasurable. People come tell me all the time that, you know what, I can't really enjoy my life anymore. I can't even play with my kids and find happiness with that. So loss of interest in things that were once pleasurable, also known as, the technical term is anhedonia, but, you know, those things are very prominent in clinical depression. And along with that, you see some physical symptoms. Sleep difficulties, it can be sleeping more or sleeping less, eating more or eating less, losing weight or gaining weight. Fatigue, people get very overwhelmed very easily when they're depressed. They get tired easily, even by doing things that they would do easily when they were not depressed. They have trouble focusing. We see that in kids in school. We see that in people. They have trouble reading. They have trouble doing work that they need to focus for. And certain feelings also go with depression, like feeling excessively guilty, even for things that they shouldn't be feeling guilty, feeling worthless, feeling hopeless, feeling helpless, and obviously sometimes suicidal thoughts. Suicidal thoughts are not always present when a person is depressed, but they can be present. And it's important to remember that. Now, this is admittedly a very, very, very simplistic representation of what causes depression, but I just wanted to keep it simple so that we can think about it in that sense. So if you take a look at the three factors that can cause depression, we generally classify them into biological factors, psychological factors, and social and cultural factors. So biological factors are things like neurotransmitters, your genes. Now, what are neurotransmitters? These are chemicals in the brain. And a lot of you, I'm sure, have heard about serotonin. It's all over the place, dopamine, norepinephrine. These three chemicals, we think, play a part in the origin of depression. Now, again, a very simplistic way of thinking about it is that, there is an imbalance in these neurotransmitters or a deficiency of one or the other transmitters that leads to depression and sometimes also anxiety. A lot of times people that are depressed are also anxious. They worry excessively. Now, why do we think this happens? The imbalance in the neurotransmitters, it can be caused by genes. There's no single gene that we know directly causes depression, but we think that there is some genetic susceptibility that predisposes people to depression. Some medical conditions like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancer, endocrine diseases, the most common thing that we try to rule out is low thyroid, hypothyroidism, can look like depression a whole lot. Excessive use of alcohol or drug use, negative life events. Now, this is where social factors and cultural factors and circumstances can cause depression. If a person is already predisposed to having depression, then negative life events like death, loss of a job, or even a moves can be very stressful. Any stress can trigger depression. And certain styles of thinking, this is why we say psychological causes causes, people think differently, and we don't know why that is, but it could be because of, again, genetic factors, because of how they were brought up, because of what they saw in their house growing up, and that's what they learned, right? So if a person interprets, one of the styles of thinking that can lead to depression is if a person interprets negative events as being caused by them. This is just one of the ways of thinking that can cause depression. There is several. I'll give you an example. If I lose my job, and if I'm somebody that's going to immediately think, you know what, I am really terrible at this job. I can't do anything right. And that's why my boss fired me. If I'm somebody that thinks that, then I'm more likely to become depressed, as opposed to, if I get fired, then I'm thinking my boss is really stupid. He doesn't know how to identify talent. I'm going to go find somebody else that can actually identify talent and nurture talent. So then that protects me from depression. In some sense, it's a cliche. It's really not what happens to you, but how you take it. It is a cliched expression, but how you respond to stress and circumstances also has something to do with whether or not an actual depression develops. Now, it's really not important for us to go into the exact types of presentations or anything technically, but it is, I think, important to remember that everyone's depression looks a little bit different. Now, if you have seen a family member like an aunt or an uncle who has been depressed, and now, one of your friends is depressed, then if the friend's depression doesn't look like your aunt's depression, that's not necessarily because your friend is not depressed. It's just there is several ways in which depression can present itself. Some of the common ways is there's people that are depressed for a long period of time, of over a number of years and decades even, and people just think that they have gloomy personalities, they're incapable of having fun, or they're constantly complaining. Right? So this is a type of depression that we call dysthymia. And then there are people that have like really bad, severe symptoms, and these symptoms prevent them from even getting up out of their bed, taking a shower, not talking to their kids, not talking to other loved ones, not being able to do their day-to-day activities. That is also depression. And for some people, mood becomes worse during winter months. Northeast and people from Chicago here, there's some people whose mood gets really, really worse during winter months with the low light especially. And then there is bipolar disorder, where you get depressed, but from time to time you become the opposite of depression. So there's all kinds of types of presentations of depression. So it's important to keep an open mind when you're thinking about this. So I'm sorry, I think we missed, yes. All right. So let's talk, I think, about what we can do in terms of lifestyle modifications if we recognize that we are starting to get depressed, or if one of our family members or friends is getting depressed. The one thing I always tell everybody is please build regular exercise into your life. It is not necessary for you to be at the gym all the time. It is not necessary for you to be doing that HIIT, although that I think people say is really good for your metabolism. But it is not necessary for you to do anything out of the ordinary. But building in some kind of regular exercise, a brisk walk, if you can jog, yes, some weights, if you can do some dynamic weightlifting, anything that increases heart rate and it is at least 20 to 30 minutes long, can improve your mood. And we have a lot of evidence to show that exercise is really good for your mood. Build mindfulness into your life. And again, I'm sure a lot of people are already doing this. But what is mindfulness? Let's examine that for just a second. Now, we all know that as we are talking to somebody, as we are doing something, if we're cooking, if we're cleaning, if we're working, our mind constantly thinks about the past. It thinks about the future. Some of us worry, but we are constantly thinking about things that are not in the present. Mindfulness is simply being in the present at the present moment. So basically thinking about nothing else but what is going on in the present. That's all there is to mindfulness. Now, practices like yoga and Tai Chi and stuff, and meditation, these are all mindfulness practices. Now, yoga, and again, all of us being Indian, we know about it. We know about yoga, and I'm sure many of you have actually at least tried yoga. Now, yoga is a specific practice that actually builds movement, physical movement, along with a component of mindfulness. And Tai Chi is like that too. So basically, those of you that have practiced yoga before, you're moving, but then you're asked to coordinate your breath along with your exercise. So you're building mindfulness. And those of you that have practiced yoga, you know that at the end of a yoga practice, an hour or 45 minutes or whatever, your body feels better, but your mind feels better. You feel calmer. Your thoughts have calmed down. If you haven't noticed it, take a second to notice it next time you practice yoga. So yoga, I think, is like a really neat practice that builds two components that help depression or just stress in general: exercise, physical movement, and mindfulness. A lot of times, if you don't have time to sit down and meditate for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I tell people, just slow down for a second as you're eating, as you're taking a shower. I mean, when you're taking a shower, there's nobody else. Just try and slow your mind down and practice just observing what you're doing and just thinking about the moment and nothing in the past, nothing in the future. And that in itself has a calming effect. And you can build it with meditation later. And it goes without saying, avoid alcohol, avoid smoking if you can. Pay attention to sleep. And again, I can't say enough about sleep. Sleep is a very, very, very important pillar of your health, both physical health and mental health. So pay attention to it, especially during this stay-at-home times. Please pay attention to sleep. Get enough sleep. Go to bed on time and wake up on time. If possible, when you're depressed, avoid big changes and adding on more stress. This is taking on more things at work, taking on more jobs at home, taking on more responsibilities with relatives or family. Generally not a good idea when you're depressed. If at all possible, cut down on things that are stressful. Cut down on responsibilities a little bit if you can, and if it doesn't have a long-term consequence. Eat a well-balanced, healthy diet. Seems like a small thing to do, but you are what you eat, and your mood depends on what you eat as well. And then service and contribution to others improves mood. This is, I mean, there are two things emotionally that you can do for good mood and to reduce stress: service and contribution to others without expecting anything in return. You're just servicing others. Now, we know from studies that this has a beneficial effect on your mood. Has nothing to do with helping the other person. You're helping the other person, but it improves your mood. It may even prolong your life, and we know this. So please, please build in some service and contribution. Kind of seems like people that volunteer may even live longer. So that is something you can build into your life to help if you're struggling with depression, or even if you're not struggling with depression. These are all good things just to build into your life. Now, what are some of the things that you would avoid if you are somewhat depressed or starting to get depressed, or if you're in the middle of depression? Do not make any long-term commitments or important decisions unless it is absolutely necessary. I'll give you an example. I had this physician actually who was my patient, and she had this offer to take a position as the medical director in her hospital, and she was doing well, and nobody at work knew she was depressed, but she has been somewhat mild to moderate depressed for some time, and she tried and she declined that offer. She was really interested in it, and she declined that offer because she felt like she could not do the job. This happened before she came to me, and she really regretted that after that. This was an opportunity she wanted, but she she just declined it because she thought she was depressed and she couldn't do it. Do not make big decisions when you're depressed, because if you get help, typically people get better in a month or two. So don't base your long-term decisions just because you're depressed. It's kind of like you're looking at the world with, like, tinted glasses. So everything looks gloomy, but then all you need to do is to take the glasses out, and then you'll start seeing the light again. A lot of times people are also in denial that they need help, and that they're depressed, and they might need professional treatment. This delays them getting to treatment, getting to a doctor or a therapist. Please don't do that. If you have like mild symptoms, and if you feel like you're doing your lifestyle modifications, and if you're able to cope with it and you felt much better doing that, then that's great. But if you're not, things are not improving, please get professional help. And while you're depressed, try not to assume responsibilities for everything under the sun, because again, remember, depression has a way of making you feel unnecessarily guilty. You're not responsible for everything that goes on around you. Try and remember that if you can, when you get depressed, or when one of your family members gets depressed, or a friend gets depressed. So, when do you get treatment? You may need professional help, or your family member may need professional help if depression is pretty severe. For example, if they're unable to cope with work, unable to cope with household responsibilities, unable to enjoy life, it may be time that they are seen by a professional, just to see if they need professional treatment. And again, to get to a professional, you have to acknowledge that there is a problem. And this often is very difficult. Seeking treatment for depression is really no different than getting treatment, for example, diabetes or hypertension. Do not forget that. It's not your fault. You can't will it away most of the time. You can try to change things in your life, and if it doesn't get better, please get help. And as far as what professional treatments are available, therapy and medication. A lot of you know about therapy, and here in the US we have two separate disciplines that provide those two treatments. Usually medication is provided by a psychiatrist who is medically trained, and therapy, some psychiatrists do therapy, but mostly therapy is provided by either psychologists or licensed clinical social workers. So a lot of times you're seeing not one but two providers, because a combination of those two is really essential to help, particularly with like severe or moderately severe depression. Now, always remember, if you or your loved ones has suicidal thoughts, that is an indication to get some sort of emergency help. If they're severe, you might even need to seek emergency treatment. Just remember that. Now, what happens if you have a loved one, if you have a family member, if you have a friend that is depressed? Please, the best thing that you can do for them is to understand that they are not choosing this. They can't just turn around and decide to be happy. What I see is, especially, Avi also mentioned that I practiced in India for some time. I was taking care of my parents. So I practiced here for a while, and then I went back to India, and then I practiced there, and then I kind of returned. So especially in India, what I see is family members have trouble understanding why people should be sad or depressed. To them, it kind of seems like unnecessary. I've had a lot of husbands and fathers say to me, but she has everything she could want. Why is she depressed? Can you tell her? Can you explain to her that she doesn't need to be depressed? So I think the first thing that a family member can do is to understand that they're not choosing to do this. It is no reflection on you. It is no reflection on what you have or have not done for them. Even if you have had a difficult relationship with them, that doesn't necessarily cause them to become depressed many times. So don't blame yourself. Just empathize with their feelings. Know that these feelings are real for them, and tell them that you know these feelings are real for them. And again, always remember that sometimes depression can have the tragic consequence of suicide. So be mindful of that. Do not minimize the risk of that. Be mindful of that and get professional help if necessary. Now let's segue over to COVID stress. And I know that people in California right now, you're seeing a surge right now. I don't know if you have a stay-at-home order, but I heard that they were talking about a stay-at-home order. I'm in New Jersey, and we just came out of a surge and peak, and we literally never did not go anywhere for 2 months. So we are just coming out of that. So there is a lot of things to fear and worry about. Your own health, your family's health, for some people, it may be the future of their job or financial situation, and loss of support and services you rely on. When I talk to my friends in India, when I talk to my parents in India, they can't really have household help anymore because of the risk of transmission, and it is really taking a toll on them. So there's a lot of things to be stressed about lately. What we are seeing is this changes in sleep or eating patterns. People are having difficulty concentrating. People are having worsening physical conditions like diabetes and hypertension. They're having worsening pre-existing mental health conditions, like if they have a history of depression or anxiety, that seems to get worse. And we have seen an increase in the use of cigarette smoking and alcohol during this time. People are doing anything they can to cope with these times. So I think about combating COVID stress the first and most important thing of dealing with any kind of thing that is stressful is do what you can to help it. If you know you can control it, ask yourself, what can I control? If you know you can control it, then do it. Do whatever you can to prevent the disease. Mask wearing, hand hygiene, social distancing, maintaining good health, like, with physical exercise, diet, and that kind of stuff. Do everything you can that you can control, and have a plan for the things that you can plan for. Again, we can't plan for everything, but have a plan for the things that you can plan for. I'm sure you guys have telephone numbers of your primary care physician, your local emergency rooms, where to get testing, how will you quarantine, what room are you going to designate for who, what do you need if somebody has to quarantine in the house? Do you have a pulse oximeter in the house? Do you have enough masks if somebody is quarantining in the house? Do you have supplies if the whole family needs to quarantine? And who are the friends you're going to call to help? So I'm sure you guys have thought about all of this, and maintain physical health, exercise, good diet, mindfulness practices, all the things that we talked about. So these are all things that you should do anyway, but I think they're important to combat the emotional stress as well, because if you know that things that you can take care of have been taken care of, there is a lot of solace in that, generally, in dealing with problems. So keep informed, but avoid the 24-hour news cycle. I don't know how many of you have been doing that, but when we were at our peak, initially what we would do is, because this was all new, and New York Governor Cuomo would give like a daily address, and we would just watch the TV all the time, and that got to be too much within a couple of weeks. So avoid the 24-hour news cycle. Avoid constantly bombarding yourself with all kinds of social media and information. Trust me, it is almost impossible to miss information. Somebody is going to tell you, somebody is going to send you a WhatsApp message, you're gonna know. And what I have done is I have signed up for those newsletters for my area. If something changes, if the risk level goes up, if the positivity rate goes up in my county, then I've just signed up for that. My son is going to college in Illinois, near Chicago. So then I've signed up for those alerts. So, but that's about it. And once in a while, I'll watch the evening news. So that decreases stress. And again, during these times, more important than ever, make and keep routines. I can't tell you, I can't emphasize how important this is. Going to bed at a certain time, waking up at a certain time, and even if you're not physically going to work, taking a shower, maybe getting dressed and sitting at a desk that you designate as a work desk, even if it is at home. These things are really important in cutting down the stress. Stay connected. Isolating does not have to mean that you don't talk to anybody, you don't keep in touch with anybody. Do video calls. I've heard people doing Zoom calls, group Zoom calls. Do that. You know, we have, you know, some of my friends and I, we played Antakshari on Zoom. Do that. You know, whatever works for you. Whatever works for you, keep social. If you're at a point in your particular state where you can meet outside with social distancing with friends, if at all possible, consider that. Whatever you can do to keep in touch with other people. And again, do not hesitate to get professional help if it kind of seems like it's out of control, the anxiety, because a lot of people have volunteer psychologists and even psychiatrists that are helping people out during this difficult time. Most states have some system to do that here. And ask yourself a few questions when you find yourself getting stressed. Am I overestimating the likelihood of worst case scenario? Sometimes we do that when we are stressed. And ask yourself, what strategies have helped you in a previous stressful situation? Some people go on walks, some people talk to friends, some people binge watch Netflix. People do different things to cope with stress, and you probably already know what works for you. So go ahead and examine that. Now, what is a small, helpful, positive action that I can take right now rather than sit and worry and worry and worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen next year? You know, is the vaccine going to come by early next year? Rather than do all of that, what is a small, helpful, positive action that I can take like right now? And what am I grateful for? In spite of all the difficulties, all the difficult times, most of us have something to be grateful about. Many of us have our families to be grateful. We have had so much time with our families. Those of us where our kids don't live with us, they've all come home and we've had so much time with them. They're all itching to leave now, but you know, we've had so much time with them. So am I grateful for that? What am I grateful for? Do I have a job? Am I grateful for that? Helps put things into perspective for yourself. And again, can I do something to help others? Do not underestimate the power of helping others. During this time, there is a lot of people that are isolating, elderly people, people at high risk. You know, can you do something to drop off their groceries? Talk to them. Do you have family members in India that are isolating and that are scared? Can you video chat with them? Can you help families in India by talking to them? Because right now they have a surge and it's really difficult right now in both the Telugu states. So what can you do to help others? In some ways to help others, but also to help yourself. Now, if you notice, a lot of the things I talked about that you can do if you're somewhat depressed to help yourself, or also the things that you can do to help yourself with COVID stress. Now, a lot of us are working from home, myself included. Now, what are the things that you can do because that can get stressful? And trust me, I'm in the same boat. Confine your workspace to a specific area if at all possible. So if possible, you leave your work at the end of the work day with clear boundaries. You go to work at whatever time, if at all possible. Maybe you get a cup of coffee like you're going to kitchen at your workplace, but then you come back, you do your work, you focus, try to tell your family members, if they'll listen, not to really disturb you when you're actually working, and leave work on time so you can do other things like exercising, taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, doing things that you enjoy. And again, be thankful for work if you are continuing to work. And I think for Indian women, please, get that husband and kids of yours, if they're old enough, to help you with the chores. One person can't do it all. If you have young children, and the people that are most stressed during this time are probably parents of young children with nuclear families, nobody to help them, no babysitters, they can't send them to schools, they can't send them out of the house very much. So believe me, it's not you. I'm a child psychiatrist as well, and I treat kids all day long, every day, and I see mothers and fathers that are ready to pull their hair out. It's not you. It is the times, and it is an excessive amount of stress on you. So be kind to yourself. If at all possible, communicate with your spouses and co-workers that you need help. We actually had a therapist at work who had 3 very young children, kind of like toddlers to preschool age. And he told us up front that, we have 3 young kids at home. I can't necessarily be on meetings all the time. I can't talk to you all the guys. So we came up with a system where we would only talk to him when his kids are in bed napping. 1 o'clock was their nap time. We knew about their nap times. We would only text him and not call him because we know that he can't pick up the phone all the time. Even his patient appointments, he was arranging them when the kids were napping or his spouse was around to take care of them. So, many people are understanding, and I understand that some workspaces are not understanding, but if at all possible, talk to people and see if you can get some help. Be really, really, really realistic. You're not going to be able to do everything perfectly with young kids at home and working from home and doing chores at home. This is not a reflection on your capability. Stop blaming yourself. And again, for kids, when you're talking about kids, routines are more important now than ever. And I think if at all possible, depending on where you are and what your weather is like, if you can take them out and they can burn out a little bit of physical energy without them coming into contact with other people, maybe state parks, take them with you for hiking, walking, so they can run around and play if you have the time. That has really helped people with young kids and themselves. Now, when kids ask you questions, if they're at an age where they're asking you questions, keep it honest, but to their age level. There is no need to lie to the kids. To the extent possible, be honest to them about what's going on in the world, but keep it to their level and not let it go over their head. So in conclusion, so as we said, depression is an illness caused by biological, physical, psychological, emotional, and circumstances. There are many, many lifestyle modifications that you can implement, and a lot of times they work, especially if your depression is just mild or moderate. However, if it is severe and if it's not getting better with any of these modifications, it is really important to get professional help. Remember, there is no shame in getting professional help. It's no different than getting help for your thyroid condition or depression or hypertension. Now, also remember, we are living through a very, very stressful time, unprecedented times. Pay more attention to your self-care than usual. More than anything else, be kind to yourself and to your family and to others. Now, you've all heard about the serenity prayer, right? Lord, give us courage to change the things that we can change. I'm sure, a lot of you can remember that. Now, this is the original quote by Reinhold Niebuhr that kind of gave rise to that. And I love this. Father, give us courage to change what must be altered, serenity to accept what cannot be helped, and insight to know the one from the other. I love this quote, and I think it has it tells us volumes about what we can do during this time. And I also a lot of times think about those of you that are Hindus. Karmanye vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. So what Lord Krishna is asking us to do is do your part, do the things that you can do your karma, and don't worry about karma phalitam, which is mine. So what a wonderful way of trying to deal with stress. Do what you can, do what you can control, and stop worrying about the things that you can't control, like the results of results of what you have done. Right. With that, I will end, and we'll try and take some questions. Thank you very much. Right, let me.
Thank you, Padma. That was a great talk. So today, everyone, so if you have questions, you can either please post them through chat or the Q&A tab. So yeah, please use those two tabs to post your questions.
Right. I'm not seeing any questions, Avi. Does that mean that we don't have any questions?
I think so. So maybe,
Okay.
I mean, they're still typing. Okay, so.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarita Garu. I really, really appreciate it. So some people are asking me if I do virtual appointments. Fortunately, the place that I work with and a lot of, very welcome. So unfortunately, the way things work in the US, I only have the state licenses that I have, and I can't treat anybody if I don't have the state license, and if I'm not, part of some kind of work. So I may not be able to do virtual appointments out of the purview of my current job, but I'm sure Jansi Garu can give you my information. I can help you with finding somebody in your area, if that helps. I hope that helps.
Yes, we can share your contact info. So we'll have a link to the recorded webinar, and we will also send the contact info to everybody.
Yeah. Well, one question from Padma Shri Garu is, how can we make children understand today's COVID situation? So I think some of that depends on how old the kids are. Now, if you have a very young child, like that is 2 or 3, in all likelihood, all they understand is that mommy or daddy are just home and they can't go anywhere. They might even enjoy that, and they may just recognize, all they may recognize is that they can't go out to play, maybe, if you are isolating or something. Whereas, what a teenager understands is very, very different. So how you talk to kids really depends on their age. Now, let's say you have, I don't know, first grader or second grader. Always, I tell parents, always be as honest as possible with your kids. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we tell a first grader that, family members can die. That's not necessary. But if they ask, mommy, how long am I going to be home? I think it is reasonable to say, honey, I don't know at this point. Now, we have this condition called coronavirus, and people can get infected. There are things we can do to protect ourselves and our families, like hand washing and mask wearing, and it's really important you do that. I don't know when you're going to be able to go back to school or when I'll be able to go back to work. But I do know that at some point the doctors will find something to help us, and we can all go back to work and school, and things will go back to normal. Now, if you notice, I haven't given any excessive information that can scare the child, but at the same time, I've tried and kept it honest. There's nothing in there that is not true. In general, it's not a great idea to tell kids, well, it's all going to go away tomorrow, because it's going to, well, one, it's not a great thing to do with kids, and 2, it's going to come back to bite you. Trust me, tomorrow they're going to ask you again. So probably a better idea to keep it honest and simple. Now, teenagers may be a handful too, because they want to go out, especially, college kids that have come home. They want to go out and meet with their friends. with them, I have kids that are in college. So I level with them and I say, I get that you want to go outside. It is hard for you not to go outside and not to meet with your friends. I get that it is boring for you to see our faces all day long. I get all of that. But trust me, this is a time like never before. Hopefully this will never happen again in my lifetime or your lifetime. Please bear with us. You have parents who are somewhat high risk. You don't want to put us at risk. And you don't want to put yourself at risk because there are young kids that get sick. So the more I talk to them about, the better they get. So, but it is a struggle to help kids through this process. So, Sarita Garu is asking me about husbands and dads not understanding the person going through this. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is an Indian thing, but like I said, I noticed a lot of it when I was in India. It seems like the men in the family don't get the family members, whether it is a wife or a child or a daughter or a parent, they just don't seem to they don't seem comfortable with the idea that somebody in their family has depression or anxiety or any other kind of psychological problem. It is honestly, I don't know why that is. I would think that in our culture, there is a huge stigma about mental illness that has something to do with it. And I also think that just in general, women tend to be more open to new things than men. And I also think, especially in our culture, I think, yeah, things have changed and we've moved on. But I think that the stereotype is the man is supposed to be taking care of the family. And many times the man is viewing this as it's a reflection on him not being able to take care of the family. Unconsciously, of course, they're not doing it on purpose. A little bit of education, I think is going to help, especially if it comes from somebody professional. And I know a lot of you are thinking, well, but it's impossible to get them to a professional. And I know that struggle. I think that a lot of times what I found useful is, well, a lot of these men have like depression or anxiety, not depression, but like, diabetes or hypertension. Kind of, if you talk to them and say, well, you're diabetes, right? Now you could diet, you could exercise, you could do all of that, but then you still need to take medication, or your father needs to take medication. It's not something he or she can will it away. It's like, he can't say, well, I won't have diabetes tomorrow and the diabetes will go away. Sometimes that helps them understand that somehow that this is physical. And that's why I gave you that very simplistic understanding of neurotransmitters and chemicals in the brain, because a lot of times if you say to them, there are chemicals in the brain that are kind of up and down, which is causing this, and there's really no other way to help the person other than to get those chemicals right. And that helps them understand too. And sometimes it's just a struggle over a period of time. And I feel, it's unfortunate that the person struggling with depression or anxiety or whatever other psychological issue, they also have to sort of battle their family and to prove to them that they need this help. It's unfortunate, but sometimes that happens. But these are all the strategies that I have found in my practice where people are more receptive to it.
Okay, I think that's all about the questions. So again, thank you, Dr. Padma Garu, and then we will definitely run through you the recorded version of the webinar, and then we'll also share your contact information with everybody. Thank you.
Maybe my email, you can email me if they need some help in trying to choose, like whether it's a doctor or a therapist in their area. I'm happy to help them with that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.